Help support the show by joining the Patreon or becoming a YouTube member. Also, hit that like button and subscribe if you want more Browns-focused content. Browns want to get back to what they've done well. The Browns say they want to go back to that Kevin style. They want to go back to that wide zone. I mean, look, nothing screams that the Browns are trying to go back to that old thing like minutes after they fire the old offensive line coach who was brought in with Ken Dorsey. They go, yeah, let's get this Bill Callahan approved guy immediately. What was he from? Rice, right?
Like, oh yeah, Bloomgren. Oh goodness, that's a blast from the past.
Yes. So they went at the Blue-Grin. I think it was a David Shaw guy who David Shaw is also under the tree of Brian Callahan. So Bill Callahan, my bad, not Brian. So in order to talk about what the Browns could do in the draft to build this run game, because look, quarterback, maybe the future ain't there at quarterback in 2025. But if you want to run this ball, college football has been running the ball, and this is a draft where you could build yourself a pretty solid run game. In order to do this, I got to bring on the #1 run game lobbyist on the internet, JP ACOSTA. JP, are you excited about the run the ball prospects of this year's draft class?
Absolutely. It's my favorite part of this draft class. The best prospects in this class offensively are running backs, tight ends, and tackles that might be guards. That is right up my lane. That's right up my alley, man. This is real football going on.
When the #1 tackle, Kelvin Banks, is a dude who's definitely going to play guard in the league, I'm like, yeah, this is a run the ball.
I think Will Campbell Will Campbell might be the second best offensive player in this class, and he's probably going to be a guard, which is incredible. Like you can say like some of the top college tackles, like I think Emory Jones also might be a guard. Ariante Ursery also might be a guard. So if you want to build a run game and you want to build physicality in your run game, this is the draft for you.
All right. So let's talk about running backs. So let's start with physical running backs. Now, I think a lot of people got to see Katron Allen over watching Penn State, runs like a grown man there. A guy that maybe not enough people are familiar with because he plays in North Carolina, Omarion Hampton. Like, who are these like power backs that you see in this year's draft class? Guys that you can get a short yardage win with, regardless of your situation on the offensive line, or at least could help that situation. Because that's one of the areas where the Browns were just god awful at for like the last few years, even when Nick Chubb was good.
So outside of Ashton Jeanty, who I think can run any offensive scheme, just a tackle breaking monster, I think Omarion Hampton is really good at the gap scheme stuff, like the power, the counter. Because when you get him downhill and you get him running the ball that way, he's an absolute menace. I think he's also a 3-down back. He can catch pass out the backfield, but you want him running power, you want him running counter, you want to try and get him going downhill where he can use some of that tackle breaking ability there. I also think another guy that I think is going to be really underrated throughout this process is DJ Giddens from Kansas State. He was the power back in that offense. He's very similar a little bit to Gus Edwards. I think he's a little faster than Gus Edwards, but just a big kind of bruising back who I think can take a lot of pitches from if you have a lead back who you're not as comfortable with between the tackles. You want a guy like DJ Giddens who can be more powerful, who is a monster at breaking tackles. I'm not really sure about the long speed for sure, but I absolutely love his ability between the tackles. I think he's not as physical, but Caleb Johnson, I think, will be a perfect fit for Cleveland's wide zone, outside zone based offense. He is such a smooth runner from the vision.
Iowa, right?
Yeah, from Iowa. Such smooth runner, footwork. I said he runs like the Paul George edits on TikTok with Erykah Badu. That's how he runs. Like he just runs in such a smooth way that you're like, oh, this is what it's supposed to look like when you run wide zone. He's such a good zone-based runner.
I've heard like Arian Foster with him, right? Like kind of another downhill, one cut, smooth, long strider kind of guy.
Yeah, he's a long strider. I wonder how good the long speed really is, but he can hit that acceleration button. He's got that in the bag. I also think Nick Singleton, Katron Allen's teammate at Penn State, can run that wide zone offense a little better. I think his vision might be better than Allen. I think Allen is a bit more of a bruiser, bit more of a tackle breaker. I don't think he's going to run very fast at all. But I think Singleton, if you're looking for a guy who is probably going to break the combine, it's going to be Singleton. He was a 100-meter track runner in high school, 6 feet, like I believe he's 230, and he's the one returning kicks for Penn State. So that should tell you what kind of athlete that he is. But he also doesn't have a lot of wear and tear on the tires. So I think you get a guy like Singleton. I think to an extent, Judkins and Henderson at Ohio State both kind of fit that mold of being more zone runners. I think Henderson's better because I like what he adds as a pass protector. He's arguably the best pass protecting back in the draft, but there are so many guys who, if you want somebody to run that wide zone, outside
Mm-hmm.
zone based offense, I think Devin Neal on day 3 would be a really good steal for anybody in this class. Um, we haven't talked about one of my favorite guys, Cam Skattebo from Arizona
Skattebo.
State. That boy,
Scattabooch.
that man is a hard runner. We talk about guys who ain't going back. He ain't going back. Cam Skattebo ain't going back, and he just runs so physical and breaks so many tackles that you're just like I see how this guy can make it in the NFL, even if it's in a limited role.
Yeah, Scatterboo is the interesting one because like I've seen nobody be able to really get a good grasp on like what to comp him out of coming out of Arizona State. Part of it's because he's a white dude playing running back, and everybody just like kind of defaults to other white dudes who have played running back.
Yeah, like
But
he's
his
not Mike Allstott. Let's stop.
I heard people compare him to Peyton Hillis. I was like, I've watched this man catch a football, dog. Like he's not Peyton Hillis. He's so much better than Peyton Hillis was. Peyton Hillis was like the third running back in Arkansas that year, right? It was like we run out of names for him, but he's a really good receiving back. How is he as a pass protector? Like, I don't know if that's a role where he got stressed at a lot at Arizona State. But like, how is he as a pass protector in your eyes?
So I think he's just fine. They haven't really used him a lot in pass protection, especially recently with Jordan Tyson going out with
Mm-hmm.
injury. They've kind of needed Skattebo as a receiver to be like a legit receiving threat because they don't have very much outside of Tyson. But I think he's fine. I think he's definitely more of a runner receiver than he is pass protector. I'm not. I think he's gonna be kind of viewed similarly to Isaiah Pacheco coming out of Rutgers when he was in the draft, kind of a day 3 guy who fans kind of love, kind of very a like hipster pick. Where like, oh, I like Cam Skattebo. I think he's really good, but he'll end up going on day 3 and end up being like a great value pick for a team that really needs sort of that bruising element.
Mm-hmm. Now you talked about hipster picks. I think I'm finding my hipster pick for this year. Like I don't know what system he works best in, but Jordan James runs like an Action Bronson verse. Like he runs like listening to Joey Badass, and I'm just like I like running backs like that. I'm like he just moves so well in tight spaces. He's a smaller guy. He's coming off that injury he just had at Ohio State. What do you do with somebody like that? Because also he comes from like what probably the best offensive line in college football at Oregon too.
So with James, I'm really intrigued on how he's viewed. He's a little bit smaller, 5'10, 209. He's not the fastest back, I don't
Mm-hmm.
think, but you could possibly see him ending up being like a guy like Bucky Irving, who was his teammate at Oregon. So you wonder with Irving's success, would a team that kind of wants to run a little bit more of the split zone and the counter and the power, would you want to get a guy like James in there? But I'm curious on how he tests because I want to
Mm-hmm.
know if the long speed is going to be something that translates. I think he got a lot of carries, he got a lot of pitches taken away from him by Whittington, and he kind of comes from a little bit of a gimmicky offense. Oregon's offense is very RPO based, very like very like bells and whistles to it, but I think he can be a really quality like second or third back for a team.
Oregon's offense has been terrible for Oregon player draft positioning.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's funny because like Chip Kelly's now at Ohio State, but they used to happen back in the day with like Chip Kelly, where like people were like, I don't know what to do with the Anthony Thomas, right? Because of how Chip Kelly uses him. It's funny how that always follows Oregon, but it's like the last few years you're like, oh yeah, this guy might be good, but it's Oregon, right? I think the same thing
Yeah.
even happened with Justin Herbert.
Yeah, I think a lot of their draft class this year with Tez Johnson. I'm not sure what to make of
Mhm.
Tez Johnson, who's really good in the slot, but he's also maybe
100.
170 pounds soaking wet. Like maybe he might be more closer to 165 than he is 170. So I'm not sure what you do with him. Evan Stewart probably looks like he's going to come back for another year, and even if he doesn't, I'm not sure how he's viewed as a guy who kind of took the third wheel to Tez Johnson and Bolden in that receiver room. I think Josh Connerly probably fits more as a guard at the NFL level. And then, Dylan Gabriel is a great college quarterback.
I have no idea. I think with Dylan Gabriel, it's going to be okay. His hands are going to measure like 9.5 inches, and it's just going to be over for him, right? Because like if he doesn't have large enough hands, and he doesn't test what, because I know Russ was able to make it work at 5'10", but like usually the sub 6 foot guys, like you look at that Russ tape in like Wisconsin, you forget Russ was that fast. Like, because
Mm-hmm.
we're used to watching old Russ, but like go back and watch Russ at Wisconsin, you're like, oh my God, like this dude is incredible. How did he fall to the third round? That's not the vibe I get when I watch Dylan Gabriel run. He can execute an offense, right? And I think that will be his claim to fame in the NFL. It's like, okay, this guy's been literally played so much football, so many different places, that if you need somebody you hope can execute an offense, he can be that guy. The problem is like hand size, athleticism, overall height. I mean, I know they got him listed at 6 foot. He's definitely 5'10".
You're
Like,
also worried about his frame. Being a super senior, he's kind of maxed out his frame, and he's
yeah.
also a very slight build. So he's going to get hurt a lot if he takes a lot of contact. So you wonder how much teams put value in that. But like you said, he can operate an offense. I think he's accurate underneath. I don't think the arm is that strong. And I
Mm-hmm.
also think kind of the gimmicky nature of Oregon's offense with as much RPOs as they run kind of limits him on what he actually can do at the NFL level. But I really am curious how teams view a lot of the Oregon offensive guys because like it's weird. They run a weird like gimmicky offense, but I mean Bucky Irving seems fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then even Bo Nix comes in, plays better than what people thought he would coming out. He might get that Oregon like reverse tax where people are like, well, I mean, maybe there's something we're just not seeing, right? Because he's at Oregon, even though he has plenty of tape at different colleges.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Dylan there. What about Ferguson, the tight end there?
I think he's just fine. I think he probably profiles as a tight end two, tight end three. He doesn't do anything spectacular, but he's a willing blocker. He can work in the short to intermediate areas. If you already have like a good tight end, he could probably be good as your second one or your third one, but he probably profiles more as a depth guy.
Hmm. Now, we don't often talk about the run game being affected by tight ends, but tight ends do play a role
They
in the
do.
run game, right? Especially like if you
Mm-hmm.
want to run play action off of it, they're super important. Browns definitely moving back to more 12 personnel. They have David Njoku, have a little bit of an empty spot there at tight end. I think that 34th pick is going to be more interesting for the Browns than what they do at 2. Because I think at 2, it's going to come down to like 1 or 3 options, right? Either you trade back and you live with whatever guy between Mason Graham, Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter, and Will Johnson is left when you go back to pick in the top 7 or 6 at 6 if you trade back with the Raiders. Or you don't get a trade offer you love. You just take Abdul Carter there, or whatever defensive player you prefer, because I think that's going to be the best player in this draft. It's Travis Hunter or Mason Graham, whoever it is you prefer. I don't think it's that interesting. I think you're going to make it try to be interesting at number 2, but I don't think it's going to be that interesting of a conversation. 34, though. Because then you're like, well, Josh Connerly might fall to 34, right? And you might want to see if you can play him at tackle before you flip him to guard. Or, somebody else, Armand, there's Embo and there's Membu,
Membu.
right? Yeah, so there's 2 of them. One's definitely a guard. One could maybe be a tackle, like depending on what they measure at. And the Senior Bowl is going to be really important because I think he's also at the Senior Bowl this year too.
Mm-hmm.
And you just have somebody like Harold Fainin, right? Who I think because he played at the MAC he's not going to be super high on like these online boards, but probably going to be up there on a lot of NFL
Mm-hmm.
team boards. You talk about a guy who could be dynamic with the ball in their hands. I mean, that's Harold Fanin Jr. right there. What do you think about him? And do you think he projects to be somebody who can help your run game as well at that second tight end position?
So the thing with Harold Fannin Jr. really is that he is such a dynamic receiver. Like the movement skills at tight end are like a receiver. You know, you think of how Evan Ingram was coming out of Ole
Mm-hmm.
Miss, but he's such smoother as a route runner in terms of the finer points of it, while being 6'4", 230, 235 with an insane catch radius as well. I think as a blocker, you probably want him more doing kind of the split blocks, sort of what the Raiders did with Brock Bowers this year, where you don't have him on the line. You have him as a detached guy off the line of scrimmage, line him up at fullback, maybe if you want to get creative. I think there's a role there for Fannin on the Browns, but I think you'd want someone a little less similar to Njoku in terms of verticality in the offense because you already have that. And I wonder if they go for more of a guy like Gunnar Helm from Texas, who is better underneath, but is a tackle breaking machine. Like
Mm-hmm.
it takes more than one guy to bring down Gunnar Helm. He's also a willing blocker, more than willing blocker. I think even if we get past 34, I think Mason Taylor is really good. He's a good blocker. He doesn't really offer too much upside as a receiver. I think he's more of an underneath guy, but you want to kind of build layers in that offense, especially at a 12 with Njoku being able to work more of the intermediate to deep areas of the field and have a guy like Mason Taylor or Gunnar Helm kind of work those short areas. But those are the two guys, though, I think, like, if you want a guy on day 2, day 3, that'll really kick butt in the run game, I think you go for those two guys.
Be interested to see how they view it too, because they might go feign and thinking, okay, well, David's contract's going to expire in a couple years anyways. He's getting up there close to 30, which is crazy to say about somebody who's drafted in 2017. But I guess time is just coming, right? Like it's just it's just hitting us fast.
Mm-hmm.
But it might be like, hey, David might age out soon. Let's go ahead and just move towards somebody who could replace what David does, and then while he's here, we're sure we could find a role for him to be successful in this period. 'Cause this draft, like for the Browns, it has a lot of overlap with what they already have too. Like I think
Yeah.
that's one of the things where it's like the things that the Browns need: tackles, quarterbacks. They're not really in this class. What's in this class is there's some cornerbacks at the top of this draft. There's edges. There's a lot of three tags in this class, and there is guards, right? And the Browns, they need a center, they need a tackle, guard. They got Joel coming back. Probably you're not going to be able to bench him, and then you have Wyatt Teller, who has had his issues, but like I'll give him some grace this year because he quite literally said he felt like he was playing out of position with how the offensive line was going. So maybe he feels like he could be better in a different role. So if you're a GM in that situation where you have these like premium picks in the top 100, how do you operate here? Because like there's going to be a lot of pressure for you to push positional value, but you also got to meet the draft where it is. Do you just kind of go and say, hey, there might be some overlap here, right? Like Harold Fanin might do a lot of stuff David Njoku does, but that's the best player on my board. Or do you try to find some balance with positional value by like consistently moving back off of these picks to find spots where it makes more sense to get some of these guys who might be better positional fits for you?
So I think it's a very fine line, like you said, between going for positional value and just saying draft good players, especially with where the Browns are. With that number 2 pick, that really opens you up to doing a lot of stuff. If you can stockpile those picks that you get from trading 2 back, you can kind of take as many shots at the dartboard as you want. So you can have the leeway to maybe we'll draft a guy that fits our positional need versus we got some more picks. We can trade up for a guy that we think is just good. But when it comes to building out the offensive line, I think this draft is a really interesting one and a really fun one because it's going to stress a lot on the scouting and the talent acquisition of your GM because a
Mm-hmm.
lot of these guys, you have to see it. You have to see what they can be. And that's the beauty of being in the NFL draft. It's not just what you're doing now, it's what you can become. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see how they view guys like Marcus Mabo, who played everywhere for Purdue, but is probably going to be best as a center and has such good movement skills and grip strength where if he's there at 34, I don't see any problem with drafting him there because I think he could possibly slide into round one as one of the actually the only like true like center prospect in this class that I think is really good. You know, you have guys like Ariante Ursary, who probably fits better as a guard, but has the length to possibly survive at tackle. You got a guy like Emory Jones, who also might be more of a guard with his physicality and his just nasty demeanor in the run game, but he's got the size that you want. You got a guy like Cam Williams from Texas, who is the biggest dude I think I've seen on Texas's offensive line. But as a first year starter, you can tell that he's a first year starter. You know, there are penalties. He'll have some issues in pass protection. So it's about what you can make these guys into. But at 34, I wouldn't be surprised, you know, if it's a guy like Cam Williams, who played right tackle most of his career for the 1 year that he was at Texas. You maybe can flip him to left, but I'd want somewhere where you know that you can develop him for a long time and not try and go back and forth and back and forth, because that messes up development. I also wouldn't be against, you know, the Browns trading that pick back, but also trying to get a guy like Josh Simmons from Ohio State, who would probably be the top true tackle in this class for me, but also towards ACL against Oregon the first time. So you wonder how long that process is going to be like. But this class is really fun. I'm really excited about this class, largely because if you can see it and you can see the potential for somebody like a Cam Williams, you know, if you can see it, you should go ahead and pick that guy regardless of where he's at.
It's gonna be a fun Senior Bowl. Like,
Oh yeah.
that roster, that Senior Bowl roster this year is just like picked up towards the end. I'm like, oh wow, they're just adding heavyweight after heavyweight to this whole thing. So it's gonna be a fun week down in Mobile to just watch that D line, O line drill. That's where I'm gonna be camped out at each 20-yard line. It's like I'm watching that shit all day. But yeah, it's gonna be super fun there. One quick question, because I think what Milroe seems like he's gonna be in this draft, right? Like he seems pretty dedicated to being in this draft. And I was like pretty sure after the Michigan game, he was going to grad transfer somewhere, right? But I guess in his mind, if I can't stay at Alabama, I'm not going to play anywhere else. And like I thought there was a chance if he went somewhere else and like they just let, like with Milroe, I think the problem with him being at Alabama is you're going to have to win games there, and he needs to develop more than he needs to be in a position to have to win games. And the one thing he desperately needs to develop more than anything, I know people talk about his accuracy all the time. I'm like, his pocket presence is abysmal, right? And it doesn't, like if he had better pocket presence, the accuracy wouldn't bug me as much, because I'm like, he's strong enough and fast enough and athletic enough to where he could be his own check down in the NFL. But if he's not aware of what's going on around him, he's just going to be in third and long. And he might be the worst quarterback to have in third and long because he's not there yet as a passer. What do you do with somebody like that when they come out this early? And I'm like, you need to go to Missouri, somewhere in the SEC where nobody cares, and just throw the ball 50 times so you can work on some of this shit. And he's not going to get that opportunity in the NFL. You're not going to learn pocket presence by playing in the preseason or in 11-on-11, 7-on-7 drills with how the NFL works now. What do you do with him? Like, do you see him as like a true quarterback prospect, or is he somebody who you have to kind of envision with the slash? Like, I don't think he can play running back or anything like that because most of his runs are off these option plays, right?
Yeah.
So he has to be at quarterback to be effective as a runner. But he has so much to work on in the pocket that you can't play him as a quarterback. But he's such an intriguing athlete that you're going to want to put him on the field somewhere, right? Like that is the ultimate, like, somebody's got to have a vision, dog, like to take him.
Somebody, you have to know going in that you can see what he can become, but you are giving it time. I think the thing for him would be the same kind of thing that happened with Jordan Love, where you let him sit and you let him kind of wait it
Mm-hmm.
out and see what you can do development wise. My biggest thing with Jalen Milroe is the development track that he was on at Alabama this year fell off a cliff. Like
Yeah.
we saw the Georgia game and it was like, oh, this is it. This is the guy who we thought was going to be, who we thought was going to show up. But then it kind of just fell apart for a whole lot of reasons. I'm not sure, but as a passer, the thing that really stands out is he doesn't have a lot of flexibility in his arm.
Yeah.
So, and I think that matters because he can't really access a lot of different arm angles from the pocket, which would help me a little bit with his pocket presence if you can just throw it around the guy. You know, we talk about like Lamar Jackson, but Lamar's pocket presence is among the best in the league, but he can also unlock different arm angles, which is something that he's grown into a lot. I think the view and the vision for Jalen Milroe is a supercharged Jalen Hurts, who also doesn't have the arm angle stuff
They're
really.
both too rocked up for their own good, it feels like, right?
Yeah, they're
Like,
both really strong dudes,
yeah.
but the difference with Milroe versus Hurts is where Milroe or where Hurts runs like maybe a 4.5, 4.6, but is powerful on like QB draws and QB power. Jalen Milroe is legitimately one of the fastest people on Alabama's football team.
Yeah.
So he is 6'2", 230, but also running 4.3 or
Yeah.
4.4. So you can have him do the option stuff. I think the thing for Milroe and Hurts is getting that year, but I also would like to see him just improve a little bit in his accuracy downfield, which is what helps Jalen Hurts be who Jalen Hurts is. He might not be the best at the pocket presence stuff or the
Mm-hmm.
QB 101s or like the master level QB stuff, but he's a +1 in the run game and he also can hit the deep ball. And that's where I think Milroe should probably try and, if you're good at that one thing, we can add on everything else.
Yeah, like if you can stay ahead of the sticks with Milroe, you'll be fine, right? If you can get him to be at a place in his game where he can consistently stay ahead of the sticks, I think you can get something out of him at the quarterback position. The question is like, can you get that out of him, right? That's a
It's
big if because he like what Jameis Winston had that one drill where he was like with the trash cans and the dog barking after him. I'm like, hey, he need to do that shit, bro. Like it was a meme when Jameis did it, but I'm like, he needs to because there's times at like when you watch him play against South Carolina, against Tennessee, against Michigan, where he's just like he doesn't have an internal clock. It feels like,
mm-mm.
and he's like, it's not like that you're standing still. Well, it is that you're standing still. He's just standing completely still, and he doesn't even feel it coming, right? And in college, he's so big that's not going to be a fumble every time. When it's Myles Garrett or TJ Watt or Trey Hendrickson or one of these guys, a Roquan Smith hit coming blind, or like Marlon Humphrey on the nickel. That dude's gonna make you fumble, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or at least make you take a really really bad sack. And that's the kind of stuff where it's like he has no use in 3rd and long. And you saw that Michigan just got him behind the sticks, and then when they tried to run with him, they just keyed in on it. He couldn't get anything going. That's the big thing with him. He has to figure out how to be good enough at the intermediate stuff to avoid these situations where he has to worry about 3rd and long, and then eventually develop some kind of bag to be useful in those situations. Because like you don't got to be the most accurate guy in the NFL, but you do have to be past a certain threshold, and he's not there yet either.
And
So,
again, I think this is exactly where Jalen Hurts is. You know, I
mm-hmm.
don't think he's very good in over the middle of the field or in the intermediate areas, but he is so good as a runner. And the Eagles have built this offense to make sure that his ability as a runner is always highlighted and masking the deficiency as a passer. And even when they do pass the ball, they're throwing it downfield to AJ Brown. That's something where in a couple years, yeah, I could see Jalen Milroe doing that. But if you don't give him that time and you're forced to play him early, he'll probably also get you fired.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I he's just such an intriguing player because like the talent is there where I could see him going in certain places in the draft, but I'm like, man, you gotta have a plan. Like that's you gotta
Mm-hmm.
have a quarterback to draft Jalen Milroe, right? Like it almost feels like that kind of like you could draft him if you got Lamar Jackson, right? Where you're not gonna worry about having to play him at all. Like, but if the Browns draft him and it's like 36-year-old Kirk Cousins and Jacoby Brissett holding him off, that's not a plan that's gonna
That's not gonna.
work.
That's
Yeah,
not gonna work. And
yeah.
I also
So,
don't think Milroe's a very good fit for what Stefanski wants to run
mm-hmm.
offensively. Jalen Milroe feels like, at least we haven't seen him do it yet at a college level. Do sort of the under center stuff and be a little bit more of a better downfield passer, because I think that's something that also is a little bit underrated. Kind of where I think Milroe can improve is the deep ball accuracy was not great. It took a lot of Ryan Williams like superhero plays.
Those balls drift left to right pretty easily, right? Like
Yes.
the thing with him, the only reason I think there's a shot it could work with a system like that is because those systems are really good at just simplifying things for these quarterbacks, where it's like half field, read that, make that decision, right? Like get it out on time, get out quickly. I think he can get, like if you ask him to be on time, I think he can do that if you make it clear enough for him. So that's why I think there's some hope of him in that system, because like once you start getting to like these spreads and these shotgun systems that they like run the NFL, it's like a lot of decisions he has to make and processing he has to do. I'm like, I don't know if that fits him best. And it's the same kind of conversation I think you got to have like Cam Ward and even Shador, which we're not going to be able to get into because we got to get out soon. Where I'm like, with Cam Ward, I'm like, yeah, his best stuff's like when he does like an RPO and just rips something like right off the bat, and there's not really much decisions to be made there. So I could see why some people would think that could work. But then if sometimes it feels like he just waits until the play breaks down to do anything. And even with Shador, the thing that makes me concerned about him is like, yeah, his intermediate stuff has a time to throw of like 340. You know, like there's no world where that exists in the NFL. Like you're just not a good enough athlete to let that. Like even what even somebody like Joe Burrow or Josh Allen like can't get away with holding the ball that long. And those are the guys who are kind of built for that in the NFL. So it is this is an interesting year for quarterback. Like you got to have a vision for it, but you can't be desperate, right? You can't just look into it hoping to see a quarterback, because if you do that, you're gonna get fired. Like this is the ultimate. This dude will get you fired year.
There are a lot of
If you're
guys.
just swinging blind.
There are a lot of guys. If you jump, you're gonna get fired. But I think it takes a lot of. This is gonna stress for a lot of teams being able to build around your young guys, especially at the quarterback position. We think about guys who have been successful early as rookies. I think Jaden Daniels is a thing of its own. He is that offense. But with Bo Nix, you have the proper protection and you have the proper play calling.
Mm-hmm.
With a guy like CJ Stroud in his rookie year, you had the protection and the playmakers. You need at least two of those three: protection, playmakers, and play calling to figure out what you have in a young rookie quarterback. And it's so important now. And I think that's what the NFL is learning. You can't just throw these guys into the fire and expect Andrew Luck to come out. I think we're still trying to learn that you can't just put these guys in bad situations and then wonder why he's so bad,
I
because
mean,
you didn't help him get better.
but two of the most hands down, yeah, that guy's going number one overall freshman year of college. You saw guys, Trevor Lawrence and Caleb Williams. NFL career for Trevor hasn't been what you thought it would be, because partly because the Jaguars got that pick and thought they were done, right? Like, okay,
Yeah.
yeah, we got the guy. Same thing's going on with Caleb Williams, who I think plays a little bit better than people give him credit for, but just is in a situation in Chicago where they're just like, hey man, save us, dog. And he's just too young to be able to do that. You can't look for a savior at quarterback. You got to build a nest, and part of building that nest, I contend, having a great defense always helps your offense, no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second thing that can help your offense, run game. You get a good run game, get a good defense. Hey, you can get some great play out some mid with that. That's Jimmy
Mm-hmm.
Garoppolo's whole career. Good run game, good defense.
And you think
Like,
about with I think one of the better rookie seasons that we've seen in modern history is Dak Prescott's rookie year with the Cowboys. Dak's rookie year. They had a great run game, and they had great play calling and a great defense. That is something that teams should do. That's what you have to do with a rookie quarterback. You got to try and make it so not every decision, not everything is on him. And that's where I've kind of think I've learned this year is running the simple stuff and being good at the little, like the basic stuff in an NFL offense is really good when you can maximize it at its best. You know, I don't think Cliff Kingsbury is doing anything revolutionary as a play caller. People know I don't like Cliff Kingsbury. But what he's done is he's just made that offense built around Jaden Daniels and his strengths and developed the offense more as Jaden develops. So you're growing with the quarterback. Bo Nix and Sean Payton kind of looked weird at first, but then you saw Nick start to grow within the offense. And that's what we're getting now is Nix is operating that offense at its best potential right now as a rookie. So I think what NFL fans have to understand is you can't try and give this rookie, if the Browns draft a quarterback at 2, you can't try and give him the master's level QBing stuff right away. You got to try and do the easy stuff first and then continue to add on as he grows.
We watched Deshaun Watson fail all 3 courses.
He failed all 3 courses. He had to drop out. He came back, failed the course again.
I'm like, it was one year he got good on the pass-fail class, right? And then like he came back the next year, was like, nah, this GPA not gonna be good. Like,
he is the dude where like you get that one grade before a drop ad, and it's like, yeah, this ain't it. Bro, it's not happening.
Unbelievable fall off for him. But thank you, JP, for coming on here. Make sure you guys check out JP. JP, let them know where to find you, man.
You can find me at SB Nation. Follow me on Twitter at ACOSTA32_JP. Follow me on Blue Sky at JP ACOSTA32. I am the football writer at SB Nation. Where there's any football being played, whether college, NFL draft, I'm probably going to be writing about it, probably going to be posting something about it on social media. I'm starting more of my intensive NFL draft work this week, starting with the defensive line class and the edge group that I actually think is pretty fun. So follow me along, see what I'm doing, see where I'm going.
Yeah, definitely. He means that shit. I saw him tweeting about fucking Cam Miller. Okay.
Hey, you know what? Cam Miller is going to be a great Taysom Hill impersonator.
Yep. Well, I saw the other dude at Montana. I was like, I don't know. Montana State feel like that's the Taysom Hill guy. That's the guy that got the
Tommy
deal
Millott?
at the Tommy Millott. I'm like, that dude looks like somebody Sean Payton gonna be like, let's try you out.
Let's see something. Step into my office.
Let's try you out, man.
How do you feel about playing tight end?
Yeah. How you feel about playing everything? You know, you want to return kicks?
You want to be a punt gunner?
Don't let Sean Payton get Jalen Milroe.
Oh, no. He is going to reinforce all the stereotypes about black quarterbacks.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He going to have Jalen Milroe come in on them quarterback plays, and you know exactly what I mean. Just straight up read options where you know the running back ain't getting the ball. Like,
nobody else is touching the ball. It's like the Justin Fields thing in Pittsburgh. They're not throwing the ball with him in the game.
Oh, like, it's third and what? Oh, yeah. Milroe.
Third and Milroe. Third and Milroe.
The name for the package we're going to find out is problematic as hell, too. But thank you, JP, for coming on. Y'all have a great day. Have a better night. Peace.